joined now by John Davison. He has 20 years of experience in managing games for print and online, and he's now Vice President of Programming for GameSpot, a site that closely monitors the gaming industry. And I'm so glad you're here. You've been covering games since pre-Tetris, so for a very, very long time. When you look at a unique and different company like Zynga, what do you see as the biggest risks?
I think part of it is what we've been touching on today, which is growing that. I mean, they're huge, and the numbers that they're dealing with, a lot of what we're now calling traditional game companies would kill for an audience of that size. But because of the nature of the way these games have been designed and the models that they're built around, which are essentially financial models with game mechanics blocked on top, the loyalty is very much driven by the volume of people going through. In covering this, I mean, it's not the sort of scientific analysis of it, but in writing about it, we've always sort of jokingly referred to the 89-10-1 rule with the audience, where 89% of the audience is just doing it for free. And 10% are dabbling and spending some money, and then the real engine of the revenue is coming from this super engaged 1%. And if they get bored, then they just drift off and do something else. And what we've seen with Zynga as they're growing is that, you know, Farmville was the big one that everyone talked about, and we all got tired of it spamming up our Facebook inbox. And then Frontierville came along, and then Cityville, and then most recently Empire and Allies, which is much more of a gamer's game than anything they've done. Yeah, there's combat in it, and there's sort of best bits from all the other Zynga games. What we've started to see is the new games are very much eroding the older games. This isn't something where, you know, Farmville was going to be 80 million monthly active uniques forever. It's now down to 40. How
about the dependence on Facebook? You pointed out that Zynga and Facebook haven't always had a perfect relationship.
Right. So back in 2009, Zynga got slapped a bit for spamming up people's feeds, and Facebook view that kind of thing, you know, very badly. So the fact that they were able to manage the relationship back in a positive way, I mean, what is great about Zynga is the way that they adapt to the audience and to working with Facebook so quickly. I mean, you know, gaming has always been a cutting-edge industry, but Zynga are able to respond to things happening in the market, you know, virtually overnight.
All right, let's bring Cory back into this, who also has some thoughts on the risk factors and the geeks especially. Cory?
Yeah, John, you know geeks. Your whole site's based on geeks. Maybe your whole career is based on geeks, from what I can see in your resume. What happens when the geeks move on to another game, another place, another competitor's product?
Well, I mean, you know, one of the things that I think anyone that writes about gaming or is like really engaged in gaming is starting to question is what's Zynga going to do next? How are they going to dig deeper into the games market? You know, they have, you know, what I think, you know, core gamers are somewhat derisive about casual games because they're not real games. But we're seeing Zynga march more and more into that territory. And I think one of the expectations is with the money that they're going to raise from this IPO is who do they go after and how are they going to go and acquire IP that gamers are more familiar with and socialize those and expand those experiences. And so I think the next phase in their growth is embracing, you know, what the industry has been doing for the last 20 years.
Interesting. When you look at gameplay, you know, of course, you got to hire great designers. These guys are known for having a shaky reputation with the industry, have been accused of stealing games, they've been sued over stealing games. They've settled some lawsuits, they've won some lawsuits, but a very contentious world around intellectual property. Do the best programmers of games want to go work for Zynga?
So what's been happening recently, and in fact, Empires and Allies, which is their most recent release, is the best example of this. There's a lot of talent that moved across from Electronic Arts, which is, you know, the #2 video game publisher in the world. That game was built by guys that came from EA's LA studio and from all over the world. And for gamers, that was an important part of seeing the evolution of Zynga, because it was, even if they weren't familiar with the names, there was an acceptance that Zynga was starting to absorb talent that, as gamers, they had more respect for.
All right, John Davison, thanks so much for joining us. It has been called a war for talent in Silicon Valley, and Zynga seems to have done a pretty good job wooing the top talent. Great to have your perspective, having covered this business for such a long time.